And let me tell you about the Higher Self Expo July 2021. It's a 24-hour event with 33 guest speakers who are sharing their wisdom and exploring the connection between science and spirituality. Today's guest is a guest speaker at this event. To register your place and find out more, go to www.higherselfexpo.com. Hey everyone, it's Louisa Munson from Feel Good Astrology. How are you doing? For those sensitives in the room who've often wondered, where did my sensitivity come from? Am I an empath? Am I intuitive, a psychic, a seer? For those people who have these sort of hypersensitive gifts, or possibly even things that they feel a bit guilty or a bit embarrassed about, a bit ashamed about, then I think this is a conversation that's going to be really useful, because my guest today is somebody who works with empaths and intuitives to help them awaken to their gifts. And what I mean by that is they start to see their life through a different lens, through a different story, and start to realize that things that may have actually felt a bit like a curse actually you can see the gifts in them and start using them. I'm going to her website now. So her website is beautiful to look at, by the way, but she is talking about activating your life's purpose and elevating your purpose-driven business. She does a 10-week mentorship program, a 4-week purpose incubator, and it's all about living your best life as an empath or an intuitive. And she absolutely recommends people can develop themselves to be their magnetic and authentic self. So my guest today is off the scale wonderful. And I'm really grateful that you have the chance to listen in and hear part of her story. So I'm going to bring her on in a minute. Her name is Ashley DuFresne. Her website is ashleydufresne.com. Let's find out about her now. Let's bring her on. So it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you, Ashley DuFresne, to my show, Feel Good Conversations. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be so good. I can feel it.
From one empath and intuitive to another. Yeah, it feels good, doesn't it, to connect like that? I have to say I'm pretty excited too, because we actually connected up a couple of weeks ago, didn't we, and had a little chat, and there were quite a few shared experiences that we've both been through. So what I'd like to do today is just ask some questions about how you came to be who you are and doing what you're doing, because, from what I've learned about you and from what you shared, I know that you're really making a positive impact, in the world around you and far away, sort of further afield. But I kind of want to get to know, where did that invitation to share your spiritual gifts come from, Ashley? It's kind of a bit of a deep question to start with.
It is. I'm like, where do we begin here? So I'd say that the invitation to use my spiritual gifts came before I wanted it to. Before I really even acknowledged and accepted my spiritual gifts. And it felt like there was just always a divine orchestration of the people that I met in my life, whether it was a complete stranger, like an elderly person alone at the ice cream shop, or, kids that I'd run into, or, just interactions that I would have. I would always just have like these downloads and not really know what they were and didn't really think anything of it. But it would always, what was meant to channel through me was really intended to move the person that I was interacting with in one way, shape, or form. And, being a catalyst, that it wasn't always a beautiful thing. That wasn't always fun to be a catalyst. And so there was times that I felt really ashamed of my gifts and didn't really know how to handle them or use them in a way that felt good. And it kind of became my mission to help those that are highly sensitive, that are empaths, that are intuitive, that are channels, to really see the gifts as they are and the depth of them, and not get caught up on the struggles or the anomaly or the being the odd one out, or how these sensitivities can feel like struggles or burden or so, and how to really use them to be their superpower, and intend to use them in the way that their souls guided them into this lifetime to do so.
Yeah. Yeah, I really hear you. The thing that really struck a chord with me, actually, when you were talking there, was you felt ashamed about your gifts. I don't know if you still do feel ashamed from time to time. Does it ever come up again, or have you largely cleared that?
You know what? More recently that I've been, I wouldn't say ashamed, but more recently now that I'm like meeting new people, I find that, and like the dating, like now that I'm dating again, I'm like, oh, this is going to be really weird to have this conversation with people. Like, I feel like I'm really proud of my gifts, but I feel like for most people, they're not really understood until they meet me and understand me. And then like, it's more acceptable. So I've been having that journey with them once again of like, oh, how do I talk to people in a way that might not know what these things mean? And like, so that's been something.
No, I totally get that. The reason I asked actually is because, I in my own life, I've been outing myself as an intuitive empath, I guess, over the last 10 years or so. But I've always known that was who I was, and tried to keep it hidden. And what I noticed the most is as I start to push forwards, all of a sudden the ego pushes back. And just in this last week, I guess because I've been interviewing so many people who are light and bright and like radiating out, all of a sudden this kind of nagging shame thing came up, and I was really shocked to feel it, really shocked. And so I'm going to do something about it. But it's interesting because like when you do meet like-minded people, you rise with the tide, don't you?
Oh yeah.
It's an occupational hazard.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I finally feel seen and understood. Wow, like I can take these layers off. I can step fully outside that spiritual closet and be my full self and like fully loved in that. It's a beautiful experience.
So when did you out yourself then?
I feel like it was a slow progression. Like the more that I understood myself, the more I would come out. I feel like I've always been a really open and like vulnerable and authentic person. It's just like a part of my just like core beliefs. And so as I started understanding my gifts more, we're in high school and it started really happening. I would tell people about it, but I wouldn't really understand what it meant. Like I didn't know what an empath was. I didn't know what a channel was. I didn't know what any of these words were. So I would just describe my experiences. And I know that my friends thought I was crazy. Like certain they thought that I was going crazy. And I thought I was going crazy. Didn't quite understand it. And, the more I started to understand, the more that I could identify with these things and like really claim like, oh, these are real. Like I'm not making these things up. And the more I did that, I actually felt a shift in how people would interact with me and start to see me in my power as opposed to me being ill or something's wrong. It was really, really powerful. Like, the more that I really got to accept myself, the more I saw that mirrored back to me by those that I interacted with and those that I even called into my life unintentionally.
Yes. Yeah. I think that is so true. That how you feel about yourself as an empath really does get mirrored back to you because you're so aware of what other people are feeling all the time, aren't you? You can't just like walk down the street and not almost, be closed down to people. You have to physically or mentally be sort of disciplined to be able to do that because you're wide open as an empath. You mentioned illness. Did you get one of those sort of empath related illnesses yourself?
I feel like my whole life has been that. Like so I'm a very logical, rational person, and I've really always leaned into science as a form of comfort, of understanding. And I remember when I was younger, I was like, okay, I have all these symptoms. Like, I think I'm a hypochondriac. Like, I didn't really know what that was. I'm like, I don't understand why I have these things. Like, there's no reason I have this, but I'm feeling these. I'm having these symptoms. They're real. And I just look back at that moment when I was young. I was in middle school, and I didn't even know what that word was. I was just like, but I have all these symptoms. I'm experiencing these, but there's no reason why. And now that I know I'm an empath, I'm like, oh, it's because I was picking up on other people's stuff and like having a visceral, physical reaction response to it that was in my body that just didn't really make sense logically.
And for people listening that might, I mean, I'm guessing that anyone that's listening to this will already know if they're an empath or not. But for those people who happen to find this, who are kind of not sure what's going on, what symptoms are they, that you come across the most that empaths kind of feel?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. I'm going to start with like defining what an empath is, because I feel like that's so understandable. Like once I speak this out, anyone that's an empath's like, yes. Yeah, that's it. The way that I define empaths is really identifying and being more in tune with our energy. So that looks like, so most people have this like outer shell. Like if you think about like a cell, how plants have that like, that cell wall that's like pretty hard. I feel like most people have a auric field that has some kind of protective shell around it, and empaths don't. And it can be seen as like, wow, they're without this shell, or it can be seen as they are an amoeba here to transform. They have this auric field that is here to transmute the energies of the collective. And it's a really powerful tool, and it can feel like living in the world without the veil, like with the veil lifted, like you're just experiencing reality in its fullest sense, where most people have the veil over and are only getting like a fraction of what's really happening. And it can feel overwhelming. It can feel like you're crazy. It can feel like you know more than you should, and you gaslight yourself and, tell yourself that it's not real. It can look like being gaslighted by others because they don't want you to know those things. So they are then telling you that you're wrong and you're crazy and that's not real. That's not the reality. And it really looks like a lot of self-doubt and uncertainty in yourself and your ability, and unable to trust yourself because of years of, personal and external gaslighting, and just an overwhelmed experience of other people's energies and emotions and mental thoughts and processes and interactions.
I love your description, using sort of scientific terms of like cells and shells. And I interviewed another one of the presenters, because we're both presenters at the Higher Self Expo coming up, and we'll talk about that in a short while. But I was talking to another presenter who I think you should definitely chat with, because I think you'll find him really cool. Oh crikey, what's his name? I've forgotten. Roman Light. That's it. Roman Light. I mean, what a cool name. And he was saying that shell, when you look at the etymology or look at symbols and things, it's got hell in it. And the S sound is, it's an alphabet, like the symbol of the S is about transformation, because it's got a curve. So it's about movement. And so when you've got a shell, if you can crack through the shell, you're moving through hell into a new realm, and the shell is there to keep you in place. And when he said that, I was like, oh wow, yeah, you're so right. Really resonated with me, because so many people stay within their shell. In fact, lots of people build inner shells sort of inside the outer shell that they've got. And so, empaths, I guess, are either having very thin shells or no shells at all, and are kind of going boldly into the world, not exactly knowing their shape, their size, their responsibility. It's incredible, isn't it?
It's so incredible. Empaths don't understand their unique energy system because it's not taught in schools. It isn't something that's taught in, we're just taught in the mainstream way of living with like manners and like way to interact with people and such and whatever. And it just isn't what it's like for empaths. The reality of an empath and unique energy signature of an empath is so vastly different that for them to navigate a world that really doesn't even acknowledge them or like isn't really set up for them is very challenging. Yeah. It can be anyways. It also can be very empowering once an empath really does anchor into their unique gifts and potential and, do their healing work and really access the depths of their personal power and who they are and self-acceptance.
Absolutely. You mentioned gaslighting quite a bit, and I have to say, over the years, that's the thing that's really stuck with me. Is I end up doubting myself. In fact, even like when I meet somebody new who's yet to even prove that they're trustworthy, I will almost take somebody seriously if they have a complaint about me. I'll think, did I do that? Did I not? And where's my responsibility? And I have to have really strong conversations with myself, because my desire to be fair to others is so strong that I'll doubt myself. And I think a lot of people do that. But what's your identikit for noticing that you're being gaslit? And what strategy would you recommend for people who know? Because like gaslighting is quite a new term, isn't it? It's really popular now. You hear it all over the place.
You hear it more, but it's always existed. I think it's just, I really think that society, like as a collective, we're getting so much more aware of mental health and like personal interaction, or I guess interpersonal interaction. I feel like we've really evolved a lot in the last decade plus. Like it's really incredible to witness like what kids now know, that I'm like, wow, I like learned that in college. Like that's cool that that's just like now a baseline of what, so I study psychology. So it's cool to see like what's kind of norm now and what's really known. And I actually really appreciate, and I will answer that question, but I really appreciate what you said about that hypervigilance of and like radical self responsibility of like really recognizing where you're at and like how you maybe contributed to something. I think this is a gift that comes from gaslighting. And like, it doesn't seem like gaslighting could ever offer anything positive. It's just traumatic and like really like harmful. But that's something that I notice in empaths is once they kind of hone and anchor into their personal power, that radical self responsibility is something that can't be taught. That's something that really comes from within. And I think once it's like, honed, it isn't just like, oh, they're right, I'm wrong, I'm going to believe them. But it is this more like this hyper vigilant, I don't even want to say hyper vigilant because that's not great, but it's more of a deep self-awareness activity that you get to take yourself out of the situation and look at it as a whole. Like, what happened here? Where is my role? What did happen? Where might they be right? Where am I willing to learn and grow? And where might their perspective be altering this? You know what I mean? Like that takes deep self-awareness and like cultivating potent mindfulness in yourself and interactions. That is a powerful gift that empaths have that is really underrated, like isn't mentioned enough. And again, like, when we first start, we go into gaslighting and shame and blaming, and then like, not believing ourselves and just taking everything we hear at face value, what other people say. But I just wanted to like recognize that in you and mirror that back to you. Like that's a really powerful tool to have, like really great. So going to your question about gaslighting, how to know when you're being gaslit. Honestly, this is something that it just takes mindfulness to be able to like really profound mindfulness to be able to be present in the moment when it's happening, because it is such an emotionally triggering thing that when we're in that space of being gaslit, we're so triggered. Our nervous system is so rocked, so unstable and uncertain that I feel like often we don't really recognize it in the moment, and it's something we kind of realize after. You may have, there are like circumstances. Yeah, right. There may be circumstances that like maybe it's repeating, and you're able to like catch yourself when it's happening because you're like, oh, this has happened before with this person. I know that this is happening right now, but I really do feel that until you like work that, like, I mean, it's the practice of like the baseline of like behavioral psychology. When you want to like learn to like change your behavior, it takes those like steps backwards. You start with recognizing it maybe a week or a month or a year later, and then like you then start recognizing when it happens, like maybe the next day you're able to process it, and then you can recognize it like right after it happens, and then eventually through taking those steps, and having that awareness, you can be present in the moment when it's happening, and you can hold yourself in that. But that is a practice of like, I mean, it's a deep like self-awareness and like self-compassionate practice to be able to do that. But to recognize you're being gaslit, that's a really great question. May actually channel on this. So to recognize when you're being gaslit looks like somebody invalidating your personal experience and telling you that what you're experiencing isn't true.
Yeah.
Period. So saying that your emotional experience isn't true, your experience at all wasn't true, like whether that's something that you saw or felt or seen. And that can be like, that's the broadest term of it, is like somebody telling you that your experience is not true. And they're telling you, like, I mean, it may go into like making you feel like you're crazy, trying to convince you that your experience wasn't real, whether it's emotional or something that you saw or were a part of. All of these are indicators that you are being gaslit. And as an empath, the reason this is so common for an empath isn't because people are being malicious. I really don't believe that like empaths are just attracting in malicious people. I genuinely believe that empaths experience a reality so much deeper than most people. Remember, they experience reality without the veil, meaning when empaths speak about something, another person that isn't an empath did not experience that reality. They are living with that filter. So to them, they didn't experience that at all. And they're telling you like, nope, that didn't happen. I didn't have that response. They might not even be aware of their subconscious experiences that the empath is. You know what I mean? So it isn't that people are just like hating on empaths. It's just that they experience reality with such depth that most people aren't on their level.
Yes. Yeah. That's just so true. That so resonates. Yeah, absolutely. What I've come to learn over the years is just in the moment, how does that feel? I'm always asking myself, how does that feel? Does that feel good? Does that feel off? And if something feels off, I just get myself out of that situation really quickly so that I have the space to review the interaction, almost like I almost take myself out of the body or something and just really sort of connect in and think, why was it off? And does that remind me of a previous time? So it's very much like what you're saying about the behavioral psychology, sort of looking at the steps and recognizing them. And then I start thinking, okay, what strategy can I have in place? So I've got a few like phrases or things I say to kind of give me that initial buffer. But yeah, you're so true. Yeah, it's spot on what you said and shared. That's really, really useful. Because I imagine there are going to be lots of people who have been going through this process, because the first people we get gaslit by are usually our parents, unless one of them is also an empath. Because, it's our parents that we listen to the most as small children. And then it's the schools. Mm-hmm. And if you think about the way schools are set up, they're set up to be competitive, with all children the same age being graded against each other. And that's not a very good environment for somebody who feels everything. It's kind of, you can see why people become loners or kind of drift off or specialize in something like arts or music. They devote themselves to a talent or something. Yeah. So along the way, then you had this kind of desire to help people who might be going through what you're going through, what you've been through, and what you've been able to rise through and make work for you. What was your first step in setting yourself up? How did you go about that, Ashley?
Yeah, so I actually had channeled my purpose at a really young age.
Oh, wow. What a great thing to do.
Yeah. Not like I believed it or believed I was capable of it or anything, but I knew at a really young age that I was meant to help people live their best life. I knew that I was meant to help them feel through what was holding them back and support them in really rising into their fullest expression. I knew that. I didn't believe that I had the ability or capability to do that. And when I would receive that message and I would hear it, and I would hear it in dreams and I would channel it in, and I just thought I was crazy. I'm like, who am I to think this? I had like a Jesus complex. Like, what is this? Like, I just like totally shamed and guilt in my, I just didn't believe it and didn't really understand that I was channeling too. So I was just like, I don't know what this is, knowing, but like, so, my journey started, actually with art therapy. I had like most empaths, had a pretty like traumatic upbringing. I had some things that definitely set me off into a bad path of spiraling into substance abuse and self-harm. And yeah, just being in the border of suicide, even attempted, and survived. And I knew that when I survived the last one, I was like, okay, like I'm clearly meant to be here. Like there's something that I'm supposed to be doing. And I had this really profound breakthrough with channeling through art, that I, later learned was art therapy. And so I decided to go to school and study art therapy. And I knew that I wanted to help adolescents or young adults that are struggling with substance abuse through art, to support them in really healing and reclaiming their power. And I got really lucky in college. I got this internship under an art therapist, and then she quit my senior year, and they invited me to take her role. So
wow, that's amazing.
So at 20, I had my like dream job of being a director of art therapy. And at the time, I was also like exploring more of my spiritual gifts. Like I said, this journey started at such a young age that I started honing my channel at about 19, and he started energy healing. I got like my Reiki cert and Reiki masters by 20, and I was bringing that into the facility, that substance abuse facility I was working at, and this is where things kind of broke. I always wanted to go the more scientific route. Yes, I wanted to do it more alternative, but I didn't know how alternative was going to be until I started doing the energy healing, which of course channeling would come through. And the changes, the shifts, the profound healing that I would see in these adolescents in one session just blew the 3 months of art therapy out of the water. And I'm like, why do I keep doing this system, that it's normalized, when I can see unbelievable results in these sessions? And so I knew that there was something more. And that kind of began my journey of like, okay, there's something to this. I need to be doing more of this, like even more alternative that I feel comfortable with, more of the energy work, the energy alchemy, the channeling. And that kind of set me up to really walk the path of rising into the fullest expression, out of my comfort zone of like just working with adolescents and just in like, a facility that's, like accredited. But like breaking out of that and really owning and using my gifts as a way of making the impact that I came here to make. And so, it started over a decade ago, which is so cool.
Wow. You've done so well. Because, a lot of empaths spend, like the first 50 years of their life trying to unpack all their gifts and trying to make sense of the world. So you've done amazingly well.
I tried to avoid it. Let me tell you, I really tried. And my guides, it got real weird. When I was trying to ignore my gifts, they're like, oh, no. We're not letting you pretend you're anything but weird. And the more I ignored my channeling, I remember this very distinctly when I was 18, 19, the more I tried to just like rationalize it and like make reasons for it, like technology, you know what I mean? Like I would just rationalize it to like a T, like super detailed of like how logical this could possibly be. And the more I did that, the weirder and like the less explained things got. Like things started moving in my house, like garbage disposal would be turned on, like things would just get crazy. And I'm like, I can't explain this. Like I can't ignore this as much as I want to.
Yeah, no, I really understand that. I always wondered if I had the ability to kind of create a poltergeist in my home, because like when I was growing up, my radio would change its channel, when you actually, sort of physically did it, with a dial rather than kind of, doing up and down, with a digital system, so it would retune and all sorts of things would happen, like books falling off shelves suddenly and randomly, or hearing scratching underneath my bed. And I actually think it was just I don't know if it's something trying to get my attention or whether it was just my angst externalizing. I just don't know. But I think, especially around the time when we're menstrual, or coming into puberty, I think our emotions and our powers are pretty strong. It's almost like, a bit like X-Men, isn't it? When you see all those characters on X-Men, like sometimes sometimes I had this sense that I could do things, but I knew I couldn't do them here, but I was meant to be able to do this. Did you have that sensation? Like, I've got this very strong sensation that I should be able to fly. I know I can fly. In all my dreams, I can fly. In all my dreams, I can move things at will, and I know I should be able to do that. And every now and again, I kind of flick my hand out, expecting things to happen. And sometimes, I have had an experience where that has happened. But it's kind of weird, like this, almost like knowing that the field that we're in isn't quite. Is it that the field we're in isn't quite ready to allow this to evolve, or is it us, or a bit of co-created stuff? I don't know.
I think we, as sensitive beings, access realities beyond the third dimension. And so we're living in the third dimensional body in this physical form. And so I believe that, our physical form in the world, the three-dimensional world we live in, is keeping us from accessing the depth of our powers. But I agree. I felt the same way. Like, I even see it happening in a different plane. I think it is happening. I think it's just the three-dimensional form. We aren't seeing it because this, we chose this three-dimensional lifetime for a reason, for whatever reason. And we're meant to be limited by that.
I got this really very strong feeling that at some point reality will shift and it'll be game on, and all of a sudden we'll all of us around the world will kind of feel each other really profoundly, and B, all of a sudden know that we've got full access. It's like, your access suddenly kind of wakes up, and it's like, now this is going to level the playing field a little bit.
I feel that. I feel like we've already started to see the shift. Like, I've seen a lot of shifts in humanity and just the rise in consciousness. Just an example of how aware people are now, more of mental health and self-awareness and interpersonal interactions. That's some deep stuff that has taken people a long time to understand, and now it's becoming kind of baseline. That alone, to see just how powerful kids are, and even was it Gen Z? I'm really impressed with the younger generations, things that took. And I feel like we could say this forever. I feel like people have said this to me about my generation of we did all this work and now it's just so natural to you. I think that we're evolving as a consciousness, and I feel like more than ever, we are more empathic and we are more connected, and people are accessing things beyond the 3D. I mean, look at technology. That's a perfect example of something beyond the third dimension. And look how wildly accessible it is. And Bitcoin, or just Coinbase operations, or just technology. Let's just leave it at that. That's a perfect example of how we really are evolving as a collective and opening up to realms beyond the third dimension.
How do you feel? There's so much I want to talk about there. So I'm just going to quickly make a quick note. Right. Technology. How do you feel about the idea of AI and the sort of the idea that humans might be morphing or becoming more I don't know, that we might change our actual sort of blueprint and become sort of become the technology ourselves? Because when I feel into technology and the internet, what I'm seeing is this is almost like the human version of the Akashic Records. It's like, what we know to be how everything is, information is stored there, and you just have to kind of type it in www. to the Akashic Records, and we can connect into it. So the internet and this, that, and the other, it feels like man's version of what actually exists. It's like we've created it so that we can understand it. But how do you feel about humans and machines kind of evolving together? What are your instincts there?
I think it's an inevitable evolution. I don't believe we're going to genetically change on our own. I think it's going to be we're already kind of doing it. Look how attached people are to their phones. We're still detached, but how attached are we? And I believe that that's going to continue to evolve, whether it's a chip or, I know that there's there are some like studies to see like how we can extend our life using the, so I think it's happening, and I think it's very Aquarian. Like, it's very out there, and like it is an evolution. If we are looking, and if we, all of the channelings coming into how we're evolving into the 5D, like what other way, really tangibly as 3-dimensional beings, would we be able to do that outside of our consciousness and our intellect? Like this really logically makes sense. It might not be what we think of, like, oh, humans are becoming, like robots, but I think the broader term of like just how our information and how our intellect is being put on, and like is, the Akashic records right online. Like that really is the transcendence of humans. If you think about it, like that really is the next level of the consciousness evolution for humanity. I think that empaths as a whole are pretty resistant to it. And I think the reason is, I think that right now we're still seeing the infant stages of the internet, of technology. And so when any infant says it's pretty unstable, and as empaths being so sensitive, like we're so sensitive to radiation and like technology and EMFs, and like these things are like pretty like hard on us. And again, like we're just seeing the infant stages, so it's going to be a little rocky, and I do see an evolution in that, and I think there's a way that it's going to be more infusible in our lives, that isn't so disruptive to our energy fields and to our electromagnetic fields. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I'd have a good feeling.
I mean, the only reason why the EMFs and the radiation affect us is because of the frequencies that have been chosen for those messages to be transmitted at. And if they were, at a frequency that caused healing or coherence or heart opening or things like that, then our worlds would be transformed. The empaths would be lining up, wouldn't they?
Empaths like, I'm in, let's become an AI.
Do you think we can do it on our own as well as empaths? Do you think we could have a sort of organic evolution and an AI evolution, and they go side, sort of like hand in hand and kind of work well together? Or are you sensing more of a bifurcation? Sorry, it sounds like I'm asking you loads of leading questions, which I guess I am, but right now what I'm seeing around the world is like this massive bifurcation, like the division of humanity. People are kind of picking sides and having opinions, and often the way they're like, what I'm noticing, a lot of people, like people who are spiritual, have actually sometimes more of a scientific approach to how they find their information than people who say they're scientists who just believe the first thing that they're told. Do you know what I mean? So we're having kind of blended approaches, but kind of reflected back at each other. Where was this question going? I think I've lost my thread now.
I hear you. You speak on the polarity that we're seeing, and it is real. It is there, and we are in a. Not even just on planet Earth, specifically on planet Earth too. I guess I can speak on that. We chose to come to this planet to experience duality.
Yeah.
And so there is this great divide that we're feeling, this intensity of separation. And also, I've never felt more connected to everyone in the world ever in my life. And I don't see that changing. I mean, I don't see that going backwards. Like I see that continuing to come together. So as much as we're seeing the duality, we're also, or the polarity, we're also seeing the unity and the collective, I don't know the right word, the collective coming together for something greater. And I think there will be that duality. We choose that. And that's the power of being energetic beings, is we can attune to the frequency we want to exist in.
Yeah.
And especially empaths. And although it may be harder for empaths to separate from the collective, I really do believe though, and I really believe that empaths aren't actually meant to do that. I think it's natural for us to want to like run away in the woods and like separate from everyone and everything and just like dig a hole like way in nature, right? Like that is like a very natural thing for humans, for empaths. But I really genuinely believe that empaths are here to transmute energy of the collective. And I think it really comes down to the shift of perspective and anchoring into your personal power, because once an empath's in their power and they're really anchored into their gifts and they like really have their own sovereignty under their energy and can feel the separation between themselves and others and gets to choose when and how they transmute, they feel empowered in their role of being the transmuter of energy. And they won't try to block it out, but instead they'll embrace it and work with it and do the transmutation and the healing in a way that doesn't feel so agonizing and depleting and so like earth shattering, but it gets to just be a really playful and joyous and even pleasurable practice.
I love what you're sharing there. I'm just going to take a step back, just because the other comment that I wanted to ask you about the generations. There's this phrase that came up very recently for me, which was each generation or children are standing on the shoulders of giants. And I think that really epitomizes, because I've got some really good friends sort of around my parents' age. They're in their 70s. And I don't know how old your parents are, but I'm possibly closer to them than I am to you. I don't know. But, we're a generation apart. And, some of my sort of empath or spiritual pals in their 70s are, they're saying to me like, wow, when I was your age, I was only just realizing that something wasn't quite right, and only just, and they're always commenting on that. And I'm noticing, that people in their 30s and their late 20s are, streets ahead of me. And the great thing is we can all just appreciate that about each other. And I totally agree with the children coming in. Like, my kids are 2, 5 and 9. And I've heard my 9-year-old in interactions with other kids, and he just doesn't take things personally. He really doesn't take things personally. He takes everything in his stride. Someone was talking to him and saying, oh, that guy over there, I think he's a bully. What do you think? Someone trying to really pull him into a little kid-like drama. And my son was really zen about it. He just said, you know what? I think that's just the way you see it. And and he just kind of walked away. And I was like quizzing him about it. And he's just really unattached. And you can't really teach that, because kids aren't programmed to be unattached. And yet there's a kind of zen-like quality arriving in people sort of en masse. And so, when I was asking you, are you feeling like the sense of people being switched onto it, or more people arriving? If I close my eyes, I almost feel like I could locate everybody around the world, or locate a spot where there are new kind of intuitives arriving. It feels like on a map of the world, like little parts of the world are just going ding, 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 ding. It's getting brighter all the time. I really love it.
Oh, I love that. Yes.
Yeah. It's a nice thought, isn't it? Yeah, because the film Minority Report, is that the one where they've got these seers, like 3 seers, like bald ladies that they'd been sort of engulfed. There's a film, I think it's called Minority Report, where they use seers or psychics to sort of foresee crime, and so they start like developing this team of psychics, and they keep them completely separated from people. You know what you're saying about people being lonely in the woods in the middle of nowhere, so they can't be affected by humanity. So there's these 3 seers, and they're kind of kept in water, and their heads are shaved, and it's a really kind of gruesome depiction from Hollywood as to what happens to seers or psychics or empaths or intuitives, that they're kind of odd and need to be separated. So I love what you're saying. Now, you mentioned nature, didn't you? So what I was going to ask is, how do you spend your days? Because obviously you run a very successful business, and you've got programs, and I know that you do a lot of coaching with people. But, how do you structure your day to ensure that your needs are met, so that you can shine your light and be, live the best life that you can?
Yeah, thank you for asking this. So I work specifically with empath entrepreneurs for this reason, maybe not just with time, but because the way an empath runs their business is got to be entirely different than others, because their needs are entirely different. Their energy signature is entirely different. So I actually follow my intuition for most things. And I mean that really broadly. So that means that I don't have a set schedule, although I'm very Capricornian and I'm a Virgo and I have a Google Calendar that's scheduled every 15 minutes. You wouldn't think it's intuitive, but it is. And so my business, just like my life, are in seasons. So there are going to be different seasons in my business where I may be more energized and excited to be in my work, and I may be spending more hours in it. And there are other seasons that I might be completely separated from my business, and I might be working like 5 hours a week, and most of my time is doing other things. So in the whole, the broad, let's just collect all of the seasons together and what it looks like. I always have time in the morning to connect with myself, and that looks different each time. It isn't just always meditating or always journaling or always whatever. It really is on what feels good right now is a way to connect with myself and reconnect with my truth and my gratitude and why I'm here, and really ignite and expand my light. And then I have time, of course, to connect with clients depending on the day. It's either client day or it's creative channeling day, whether that's content or, working on course stuff or what plans are coming kind of thing. And then when I'm not in my work, I spend most of my time outside, because empaths need to be outside where the frequency of the earth is naturally harmonizing. And so as empaths are constantly taking things on and transmuting, it's when we connect with nature that we get to harmonize and ground and release the energy that we picked up on into the earth to be transformed, to be harmonized into a neutral frequency. And that in itself it's so necessary each and every day for empaths to be outside. So I love to run, I rock climb, I love just sitting by the river, I love just standing outside. I'll just stand there. I definitely look like a weirdo around my block, just standing with the shoes on the grass, just staring off, watching the birds or the butterflies or whatever. And that to me is just, oh, it's so divine. I try to spend as much time as possible outside when I'm not working. And I even bring my work outside.
Yeah, I think that's really wise. I used to work for big corporate companies in my 20s, and I used to be a trainer and facilitator. And I used to actually, in the summer, used to actually drag the class outside to sit down and talk business outside. And it's the best thing that I could do. It just felt really great because the job was killing me. I couldn't stand being in an office. It's the worst thing I could have done. I love that you do that. I think that's amazing. I love also that you were saying, that truth and gratitude forms, a big part of your early morning setup. Why are truth and gratitude in particular so important to you?
So empaths are, they take on everything they see. So it's really important for empaths. It's something that I train in my courses, so everyone gets this freebie, which is so necessary. When we're online, we're scrolling, whether we're interaction with a conversation with somebody, or we're noticing what somebody's posting, or listening to a story or a book or whatever. We're constantly taking on things. And what can happen for an empath is they can lose their voice and lose who they are by taking on other people's voices, their mission, their gifts, their story, whatever it is. And it can kind of feel like their own truth. And so it makes it really hard for empaths to remember who they are and why they're here and what their gifts are and their purpose. And so it's essential that empaths every single day anchor into who they are, anchor into their purpose, and anchor that into their energetic frequency, into their soul's vibration, to remind them and come back to their core and have a really strong foundation in their truest sense of their identity and their mission and why they're waking up that day. And gratitude, of course, is because gratitude is the easiest and quickest way to raise your vibration. And so the combination of raising your vibration and anchoring into your soul's vibration, your truth, is just a perfect way to start every day.
I love that. If you're wondering why I was giggling while you were saying that, I was actually up at 5 o'clock this morning to connect in with one of the hosts from Sydney Cara Swain, and she's got her own channel, and she was interviewing me this morning. And it's so funny that you're talking about losing their voice, because Karen was like talking to me about my own journey, and I could only really like focus on the bits like since I've become a mum, like the last 10 years or so. And all of a sudden these new bits of my life were suddenly appearing. And I couldn't fathom it. I couldn't work out why I'd forgotten about, my years of living abroad and traveling and living in nature, working. I lived in a tent for pretty much 3 years, which is kind of unusual, And like how that escaped me, I have no idea. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me. And I was like, oh, Karen, I forgot to say this. And what I thought instantly was, it's because I'm so busy listening to other people's stories. And it's exactly what you just said. And it's not a coincidence that that's my experience today. And boom, that's the truth that you're sharing. I think that's the beauty of like synchronicity, like demonstrated just there. I'd love to talk more and more and more, but I feel like I've had so much of your time. So I just want to ask 3 more questions, and they're kind of small ones, but I think they're going to be great ones. So you're a speaker at the Higher Self Expo, aren't you? And that's taking place on the 17th and 18th of July. And because you're in the States, I'm guessing that you're delivering on the 17th. Is that right? Saturday the 17th?
Yep, I am. Yep.
What's the title of your presentation? And can you just share a few details about what you're going to be talking about, please?
Yeah. So the title of my presentation is Collapsing Timelines, a science process to making change.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. It's really going to be speaking on a deeper look into manifestation. So not manifestation, not just law of attraction, but a deeper look in it, and really looking at how we can, looking at the space between psychology and spirituality, where those fields meet, as a way of really hacking timelines and collapsing them to move forward more easily. And so I'm going to be speaking on that. I'm really excited because it's definitely going to be like, it's going to be the medicine that no one wants to hear, but everyone needs to hear.
Oh, fantastic. You've got me like hooked already.
So like, I really hesitant to say that because people are like, well, maybe I don't want to go. Like, it's going to be exactly what everybody needs to hear.
Are you going to give us a good old telling off?
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. Yeah, I channeled that in briefly. And so I know, it's all going to be channeled through. But based on what I've heard so far, I'm like, oh yeah, we all need this.
Okay, that's one I'm gonna like put in my diary for sure. So if someone's been listening to this and they want to engage in your services, if they think, wow, I love what Ashley's about, I really want to learn more about her mentoring program, or how they can work with you, what's the best way for them to connect with you? How would you like that to happen?
The best way to connect with me is either through my website, which is right here below me, ashleydufresne.com, or following me on Instagram. That's where I hang out the most. And it's Instagram.com/Ashley.Dufresne, spelled the same way. And that's the best way to connect with me. I've been published in a couple of books. So if you're like, oh, I just want to like hear a little bit more, like learn a little bit, I have a couple of books. One of them that goes into my story of my journey of, empowering the empaths to, leading their purpose, leaving their legacy. And that's inside a book called Legacy Speaks, which is available on Amazon. And then I have a book that I contributed in called Your Daily Dose. And that's all on how to unlock and discover your purpose. So I share some tips on how to like get more clear on what exactly your purpose is. And so you'll find more of my services on my website, and get to just like feel my vibe more on my Instagram. But if you wanted to just like, I don't know, if you're more of a book person, I think that's a really great way of just feeling me energetically and what's channeled through in those intentions. Fantastic.
I'll make sure I put those on a little like ticker tape type thing on the video so people can see it as well. So that's Legacy Speaks. And what's your other book called?
The Daily Dose.
The Daily Dose. Perfect.
Yeah, just contributed to that one.
Yeah. Last question then. If there was one thought that you could leave people with today that could change their life, or I don't know, that would just give them some real good value, what would that thought be?
You came into this lifetime with a very important purpose. It doesn't mean that you need to live a mission-based life. Your purpose is to live the most joyous and fulfilling life imaginable, and that requires you to love every aspect of yourself and lead your mission with pleasure and ease. So it's up to you to not just define what mission you're here to lead, but do it in a way that is the most expansive to who you are and why you're here, to live the most joyous and pleasurable experience possible in this lifetime.
Boom. Nailed it. Wow. Well done, Ashley. That was fantastic. Wow. Are you being interviewed by anyone else about the Higher Self Expo?
I had an interview with Zane, and that's it so far. I haven't reached out so much. I've been so busy. Like, I just launched those 2 books, and then I was in this thing and that thing that my focus is now entirely on the expo, which is wonderful. So I may have some coming up.
Excellent. Well, it's been an absolute treat to have you here today. I really, really thank you so much. There are so many parts to this that absolutely resonated on so many levels. And I think for anyone that, is an empath or who might think that they're an empath, I think this is absolutely unmissable. So thank you so much. And I will check you out at the Higher Self Expo. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me and interviewing me. This was such an igniting conversation.
Oh my goodness, wasn't she wonderful? I really hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, because Ashley really is legit. She's the real deal. She's absolutely being her magnetic, authentic self, just like she tells you that you can do that yourself in her 4-week mentoring program. I really get the intensity, and I get the purpose and the mission that Ashley's on, from how she's like standing up in the world and being who she is. And I think that really comes across in this interview. So I really hope you loved it. If you'd like to stay in touch with Ashley or get in touch with her, then just go to ashleydufresne.com and you can, check out her amazing 10-week plan and her 4-week incubator. Like she said, she also hangs out on Instagram. That goes to show a bit of a generational gap, because I would never say I hang out. I barely understand Instagram, but it's about time I learned. But she's hanging out on Instagram. It's instagram.com /Ashley.DuFresne. So hook up with her there, if that's the term. But, she's somebody who can really, I don't know. I get the feeling she can change lives. I really do. So anyway, she's one to watch for sure. If you'd like to check out Ashley's story and her maybe public telling off, when she's telling us all off at the Higher Self Expo, then you can register for your free place. Just go to www.higherselfexpo.com and you can check her out there. And if you've enjoyed this and you'd like to have more feel-good conversations, from the privacy of your own home via YouTube, then just like and subscribe to me. It's Louisa Tanner Munson on YouTube. And you can always just use hashtag Louisa Tanner Munson or hashtag Feel Good Astrology. You should find me. Anyway, lots and lots of love to you wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much. Really, really grateful that you've connected with me today and also got to hear this amazing interview with Ashley. But anyway, thank you so much for being who you are in the world and standing up in the world in the way that you do. Lots of love. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed this conversation, then why not support today's guest at the Higher Self Expo in July 2021? The Higher Self Expo is a worldwide 24-hour event with 33 guest speakers who are all sharing their wisdom and exploring the connection between science and spirituality. To register your place and find out more, go to www.higherselfexpo.com.